for the squeamish, okay? You've been warned. Dr. Kenny Bond told InsideEdition.com about a patient who pulled, get this, a 5-foot-long tapeworm out of his gut. Here's how it went down.
I see this young gentleman. He's a 30-year-old Asian gentleman, and he comes in. I said, "What brings you in here today?" And he says, "I want to get treated for worms." And I said, "Okay, well, just, tell me why you want to get treated for worms." And he said, "Well, I was having some abdominal cramping, and I was having some diarrhea, and I went to the bathroom, and I had some bloody diarrhea. And so, I was a little concerned, but then after I had a bout of bloody diarrhea, I saw a little piece of what I thought was my intestine hanging out." And I said, "Out your bottom?" And he said, "Yeah."
Go on, doctor.
So I said, "What did you do?" So I reached down and I grabbed it, and I started to just pull it out to see if it's a little piece or a big piece. But a big long string kind of came out, and he pulls it out from his bottom, and it keeps coming and coming. And he's like, "Oh my goodness." And he thinks he's got this really long piece of bowel that's like just basically falling off of him. Like pieces are just falling out of him. But then when he pulls it out, it starts wriggling in his hand. It starts moving. He's like, "Oh my God." Then he knew it was a worm, and he just like sort of dropped it like on the bathroom floor, but still coming out of him.
It gets better.
He doesn't know what to do with it. He takes a toilet paper roll, and he takes the end of the worm and rolls it around and pulls it out, and just keeps pulling and pulling. It just keeps coming and coming until finally he comes to an end, and he's got this giant rolled up worm around the toilet paper roll. And so he just sort of rinses it off a little bit just because he's scared because there's bloody poop on it and everything. And he puts it in a bag and he comes in, and that's basically when I see him. So I said, "Is that the worm you have with you?" And he's like, "Yeah." "So you want to see it?" And I was like, "Well, of course." So I open it up, and it's very obvious a tapeworm.
It's impossible to say where the tapeworm came from, though Dr. Bond said the patient told him he ate a lot of sushi, and that lines up with recent CDC warnings about intestinal parasites in fish.
He's like, "How big's the worm?" I was like, "I don't know, let's unroll it." We're in the lobby at the emergency department, and I take out some paper towels, and I just unravel the worm and sort of measure it out with a clipboard, like a foot-long clipboard. I'm like, "Oh, it's 5.5 feet long. I'm 5'7". It's about my size right here, stretched out end to end.
Dr. Bond treated the patient with a simple deworming medication and sent him home. The patient was fine, but both he and Dr. Bond have one doozy of a story to tell.
This fish was full of worms, you'll get to see at the end here, but we started beyond the pec fin and made a nice slice, worked our way up the spine and against the rib line, down its back, worked through the stomach cavity, making sure not to hit those guts, and then kind of just worked the knife up and down until we were able to release the fillet here. It was a big fish, so it was a big fillet. We ended up popping this thing off and throwing that fish right in the water to feed those sharks, and next thing you know, you can see those worms. We ended up cutting it off and smoking this fish. Well, this fish was full of worms.
Did you know that people are voluntarily putting tapeworms inside their bodies? It helps people lose weight by letting this parasite eat everything inside of them. The most common tapeworm infection is called T-niasis. You get this if you eat undercooked meat or fish from an infected animal. You can also get infected if you're in contact with animal feces or contaminated water from an animal with tapeworms. This type of infection is known as cysticercosis. It attaches to the inner wall of your intestines and feeds off the food you're digesting. You could feel nauseous, have abdominal pain, diarrhea, and you'd begin to lose weight. And if the tapeworm continued to grow, you would eventually experience a digestive problem as it blocks your appendix or your pancreatic ducts.
How to tell if your weight loss is due to tapeworms. Eating uncooked meat is a great way to get a tapeworm growing in your intestine. Once you swallow it, the head attaches to your intestinal wall. It then grows by eating the food that you have eaten. Each segment is about the size of a grain of rice, and then it adds segment by segment by segment, until eventually it can grow up to 30 feet long, the length of a school bus. There are actually pills filled with tapeworm eggs that you can buy to actually, it's about the size of a grain of rice, and then it adds segment by segment by segment, until eventually it can grow up to 30 feet long, the length length of a school bus. They're actually pills filled with tapeworm eggs that you can buy to actually lose weight. But that's a horrible idea, because who wants one of these things growing inside of you? So avoid eating raw meat, and if you've got unexplained weight loss with nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea, best see your doctor.
This client has seen us multiple times and has been doing an online protocol for worms, as she seems to have them all the time. We don't know why she's reinfecting, but we actually think she's not reinfecting now. We think she's just never getting rid of them.
Found. The longest tapeworm ever removed from a human was 82 feet long and was removed from a patient in India. Tapeworms can live up to 30 years in the human body. Wow.
Obviously a piece of a tapeworm, and you can tell this for two reasons. One, it is flat, and two, it has a segmented body of different sections. Now, there's two different types of tapeworms. There's Tinea saginata, which is a beef tapeworm, and there's Tinea solium, which is a pork tapeworm. They're both capable of causing teniasis, which is intestinal tapeworms we all know about. However, Tinea solium can also cause cysticercosis, which is where the larva deposits outside of the GI tract, such as in your skin, muscle, or brain, and forms large cysts. Stay away from this stuff, guys. Okay, I was tagged in this post, and it's obviously a